Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, let the dissection begin, because we have today on the slab Zombies, straight from Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, of course, the 2016 movie based on the novel by Seth Grahame-Smith. We've got a great lineup for you today, but before we fully get into it, I want to give you guys a quick State of the Union, if you will. If you're a longtime fan of Anatomy of a Movie, which we hope you are, you know, we try to give you guys opinions and facts and things that engage us and hopefully engage you as the viewer. Now, we did have a meeting internally to see, okay, how can we take that core idea and really now make it even bigger? And one of the ways we did that, we looked at your comments, which we appreciate, and we said, okay, here's the things we can address, and here's the things that we can go after. And so, a couple of quick things to come out of that. We're going to use more visuals. And notice that does not mean that for you guys listening at home that you're excluded, because the nice part is there's going to be a link that we include. You just download it and you get all the pictures, so you get to participate that way. Also in that download is our rundown, so that way there's various things we talk about. Sometimes we don't get to all of them, you know, and maybe you want to dig down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper. This is a chance to do that and see kind of what the process for us is and get involved that way. And also, you know, we're going to try to include even more facts and really just overload it with information, because to me, the spirit of all of this is, regardless of whether or not you love the film, the process remains the same. It is so damn hard to make a movie. And so, you know what, if we can really highlight that no matter what the movie, yes, we'll have opinions about the movie, whether we liked it or disliked it, but really talk about that full process, and no matter what, be excited about that, because at the end of the day, movie making is just so fun, but hard.
Yes.
But hard indeed. So without further ado, allow me to introduce myself, Phil Svitek, CEO of AfterBuzz Networks and Popcorn Talk, and feature film editor. Next to me, we have Sean Overman.
That's right. You guys can find me at Sean Austen O on Twitter and Instagram.
And he is author and producer. So
yes,
and he has a novel out, by the way, if you guys want to check that out.
City of Angels and Discontent.
That's right.
Yeah, which I made the book cover for.
Yes, thank you, Marisa.
There we go.
That's right, because Marisa Serafini is our senior content producer of AfterBuzz TV and Popcorn Talk and visual design expert.
Yes, hello everyone. You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
And a man with many, many illustrious titles, Demetri Panos, MoviePass VP of Exhibitor Relations and formerly of Technicolor and Lionsgate.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of nothing, I like to say. And yes, you could please support me at DMovies1701.
All right, well, we have a jam-packed episode for you today. Let's start with overall thoughts. Sean, what did you think of this movie?
Well, I thought it was actually much better than I was anticipating. It's the trailer led me to think that it was just going to be gratuitous violence and gore and sex, but it actually started off that way in the film, but it ended up being a really good blend of like the Victorian era London with zombies, you know, for all the people that love zombies today.
Nice. Marisa?
Yes, I'm a big fan of Jane Austen because I have the original Pride and Prejudice book.
It's that short? I thought it was way longer.
Well, there's been
that is the tiniest font I've ever seen.
It is tiny font.
It's
for
tiny,
any guy,
tiny font.
that would be a really long book.
I love the story of Pride and Prejudice. I love all the versions that they've made so far. Maybe not this one, but the story of Pride and Prejudice always appeals to me, being I am a big romantic. And I love Jane Austen in Victorian England era. I think it's a beautiful time period that I wish I grew up in because it was fantastic. Zombies, not so much. I feel like there's so many zombie movies out there that why ruin a perfectly great story with a storyline that's just laughable and ruins it and taints the image and the story and the integrity that is Pride and Prejudice. So we'll get into it, but overall, it looked pretty. This film,
Yes.
I think they hit the Victorian England era pretty spot on with the look, and cinematography was great. And I think that's one of the strongest points of this film.
So you're saying that Miss Austen is rolling in her grave?
She's rolling
a
several
zombie.
times
She's
right
coming
now.
back.
She's getting out of her grave.
She's going to come back as a zombie and kill the other zombies.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Demetri.
I was actually pleasantly surprised by this movie. I hadn't read the book, and it was a popular book when it came out because it was. Well, I guess we'll look at the title: Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and there was this great kitsch going on around the release of the book, and people
Draw whether or not she liked them initially, and then so he brings her to St. Lazarus, and that completely separates Darcy and Wickham because no way was Darcy. He's proven in the past he doesn't care what you can say. Please let me be your slave for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Darcy would have slaughtered that whole
Oh,
congregation.
absolutely. Oh, we would have lit it on fire.
Yeah.
And to an extent, I was like, actually, again, I was wondering, is Lizzie going to really buy into this? Like, it was interesting. It's an interesting thing to pose because she is, in a sense, like Darcy. We got to fight these things, and she's seeing something, and it was almost like she was fighting to go, no, I want to accept you. Like, I like you, Wickham, so because of that, I'm going to believe you, but something inside me tells me this is just all wrong.
But him not, you know what? Him not telling 100% of the truth and not saying, "Hey, I'm bit too, and this is how I know about this place."
Right.
It really showed that. Yeah, it was that too good to be true thing.
He knew too much.
Yeah, he knew too much. It's like, how do you know about this place? Like, do you just come here? Like, are you a good Samaritan? What's going on?
Yeah.
Like, why do you have a human connection to these zombies?
But also at the same time, it made me question about whose team am I on? Am I on the zombies team now? Or am I on the human side in this era? Because it made me feel like, okay, maybe there can be a peace. And then that's when there's the whole thing going back and forth with the meeting with Lady Catherine.
Right.
And then we have the two sides, Wickham and Darcy. Like, one wants a negotiation or maybe a treaty. And then we have the other one saying, no, that's not a treaty, that is appeasement.
Right.
And there is no way, and pretty much there is no way they would know if they get to a point where it's like the zombies do get a taste of human brains, they could turn in an instant.
Right.
Which
is proven, right?
Yeah, proven.
And again, though, to me, it's part of the thing, like that. This movie too involved a little bit of mystery going on, like, and again in that opening scene at the ballroom where Lizzie comes out and the woman who's a zombie and
the Meryton Town Hall.
Meryton Town Hall, and she goes, "There's something I need to tell you," and I was like, okay, well, there are a couple of things going on here. Well, what the fuck? Zombies talk? Okay, zombies can speak.
Zombies can speak.
Number one, zombies can speak. And there's something I want to tell you. And I was like, oh, what is she going to say? Boom! It gets blown off. I'm like, you idiot!
It made us want more of the story.
To know more of what was going on because then it happened while our
Damn
friend...
it, Darcy!
Yeah. I was like, wow, this is really setting up a mystery. And I was like, and then her head gets blown off and I would have been like, you idiot! He was just about to tell us something. Like, this is important. Like, she was going to confide in her.
The headshots were ridiculous, though.
Yeah.
They were fun.
I mean, Phil was with me. I have a witness. Like, how long I was laughing at the headshots because I died because it was over the top. Like, oh my god, yeah, they had to get their headshot in. The bunch of guys are laughing their asses off right now.
It was a good way for the storytellers to shut the zombies up to give us more mystery.
Yeah, no, because every time, and it was just, and And again, I to me it was like a balloon popping. Believe me, like I said, see Hateful Eight. If you thought those headshots were over the top.
No, it was over the top because that was the only funny thing about it.
But
Yeah.
Like that was really the only laugh that you'll get out of the film, because it was so ridiculous.
Well, to me, the laughs come because we are so primed in seeing our Victorian period piece films as being very lush and straight-laced and proper, pristine, and love triangles and drama unfolding. Once you throw zombies into it and yet they take it real, then it becomes comedic because we've never really seen. It's like we don't know what to do because this isn't part of what we're primed for in this type of a story. So to me, like the comedy was inherent, like from like it wasn't made as a we're throwing zombies into the Victorian era.
It was like disbelief.
It was disbelief. It's like wow, and our characters believe that they exist and. That to me is where the comedy came from. It was subtle to me. It wasn't like because you see a head exploding. It's not just because a head explodes. It's because a head is exploding from a headshot in Victorian England. We will never see that in Howard's End, so to speak.
But I also will say this. I want to get to the kind of the devil and the zombie apocalypse, all that.
Right.
But Parson Collins. He is a character of just complete comedy, so you can't say, it's unfair to say it's just strictly the zombies that make this funny. I mean, he is literally a plot device to drive this entire thing forward, but what makes it amazing is that he's just so funny.
Yes, he's the only truly comic relief kind of guy in the whole film.
Sure.
And also, not only was he funny, but also I think there was an element of mystery about him too, because there were so many times like... I felt like, okay, obviously in Pride and Prejudice, we have him wanting to marry her just because, number one, he wants a wife, and number two, he's like, he couldn't choose Jane, so the second most eligible woman in the house is going to be Lizzie, right? So, he goes after her very, like, I guess feverishly, just like he did in Pride and Prejudice, but then because of the whole zombie element to this story, I'm thinking... Is he an undercover zombie? Is he like undead underneath all that clothing? And maybe that's why he kept trying to get her in the room. He keeps trying to get her alone, right? Oh, excuse me, ladies. It made me fear for her safety because I felt like he was going to try and bite her during the brunch that they were having in that one scene. Right.
I thought Matt Smith, he's Matt Smith. And for you, those of you watching, you already know Matt Smith made his bones and became not only England's most beloved doctor, but America's most beloved doctor. If any doctor, and I'm talking Doctor Who, Doctor Who? Exactly. If any person outside of, say, Tom Baker, David Tennant was making those strides, but yet the American audiences, at least I believe, if you weren't already a Doctor Who fan while watching David Tennant, you became a Doctor Who fan watching Matt Smith, and then you went back and rewatched David Tennant, and you would show an equal love and respect for him. But Matt Smith, coming into
by the way,
this role,
Zach Wilson, who does a lot of our anatomy movies, he does the Doctor Who podcast over at AfterBuzzTV.com. So if you want a history of that, and kind of get the recaps, check it out. Doctor Who, AfterBuzz TV.
Doctor Who. So. In the way and part of the reason is because Matt Smith can handle comedy, and he was very comedic in this movie. His pratfall, or just the way he walks, and he was
the way he was dancing at the Bingley house.
He
was dancing like a ballerina,
and he had to be so precise in his movements, and he was so proud of himself. He was like a dolt.
No. He was adult. Yeah. I think he was just a laughable character that made everyone else look better than who they were. Yeah. Because you have to have the one person that is like, oh, you're that guy, and everyone else is like 1,000 times better in the room.
But we've seen this kind of trope in so many different movies in so many different ways, and I love it. To me, we'll talk about more about his improv because a lot of it was improv. But even down to the gallantry isn't deadline where he hands her the gun so she can better carry it instead of carrying it himself.
Right. the guns.
Is that because he's clergy? He's like, oh, I can't carry anything.
These parsons, yeah.
It's him being him. I loved it. And then he always has that button, right? So this is a nice segue into Lady Catherine. You know, that whole, you know, we were talking about them arguing of, do you save the zombies, do you not? Is it genuine? So on and so forth. And then just his button at the end just made me laugh. And that's why him alone, you can't say that the comedy only relies on the zombies.
True.
He carries a good load of that.
Yeah.
He stole a lot of the scenes.
Yeah.
I will say that he was a very memorable character for a demented person.
I think that, you know, and I'm very happy to see, like, you know, it's slowly but surely. I mean, Matt Smith has been wanting to make films and be loved, you know, here outside of Doctor Who, and you know, he was in Terminator Genesis for a little part, but this is a movie that the Doctor Who fans, if you went and watched this movie, you were going to appreciate his performance. And if you weren't a Doctor Who fan before, you might look at him and go, oh, I hope to see this guy in some more movies, maybe in some comedies. Yeah, he carries it off. He really does.
Let's talk about Lady Catherine, because, you know, she in this movie is made out to be, you know, like almost this deity for humans, you know, in terms of slaughtering of zombies, which I thought was an interesting twist, and kind of meeting her. And obviously Mrs. Bennett is funny with her of like, is that an eye patch for fashion?
Is that fashion or
Function.
function? Leave it alone.
I feel like if in the Victorian era, if you don't answer a question, like it's even more rude. So even though it's a stupid question, she still has to answer it.
Yeah. What did you guys think of her? And Marisa, curious how because she was the least one I was able to find out in terms of how she differed from the movie.
Well, Catherine,
from the book.
Yeah, Catherine is the strong female that everyone goes to for approval. And need disapproval in relationships. She usually is like the one that gives the okay, and so like I think it is interesting that they made her like the strongest female fighter aside from Elizabeth. That she's the one to look forward. You know, if you want something, if you have any questions about anything, that if she approves, then it's like yes, it's okay. I mean, granted, Lena Headey, she's an amazing actress too, and I think I've seen her more in dramatic roles compared to this one, which is like, yes, she was supposed to be a very stoic type of authority figure. We got that, but it was interesting to see a somewhat comedic side, even though she played it so straightforward.
I really like that scene where they're in the basement, and this happened in Pride and Prejudice, where she visits Lizzie in the middle of the night, pretty much, and she's pretty much saying like you can't marry Darcy because he's like supposed to marry my daughter, right?
Yeah.
But instead, like obviously because of this movie and the world, like they threw in a little fight scene in there,
Right.
And I love the line where she's like, well. Madame, I can't fight you because crossing swords with you is crossing swords with England. And she ends up saying, okay, well, my proxy will have to do. And it's a huge guy who just comes in. It's great. There was a reason for him to be there.
Yep. And again, part of the smartness of, I think, or the cleverness of the script, there was between, is that for fashion or form? And there was a lot of form that took place in explanation because it was usable and it was real. They didn't really want to put it. It's enough for the audience to take on zombies in Pride and Prejudice. That's enough. So if you're explaining the fighting, or well, okay, I appreciate that. Well, then here's my proxy, which actually is a thing that happens in Game of Thrones. Just happened big time this past big season. Somebody fought as a proxy, yeah. But what I like about what I like about Lena is, you know, I appreciate that when she's not doing Game of Thrones, that she is able to find time to do some movies, whether they be big or small, or Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, or The Purge.
300.
300.
Number one thing in my head is Queen Leonidas.
Yeah. And I respect, you know, she was even in Dread, so outside of 300, she's not in these particularly, like, huge movies, but she's taking time off to do a movie here. The Purge actually did very well. So I respect that. I like that she finds the time to like distance herself from the show for a little bit, maybe do something a little bit different so that she can go back to, being Cersei Lannister again. And the same thing with Charles Dance, same thing. His character's no longer with us in Game of Thrones. Yeah, that's a spoiler if you're not watching. What can I tell you? But he too would find a way. Like I always find that in British movies and TV, it's like they have a small pool of people to pick from because they're always in an English movie or an English television show. Some of these people have popped up in Doctor Who. And it's nice to see the separation because sometimes you get pigeonholed and like you only think of them as Game of Thrones, which it's hard not to. But I'm glad that they take the time to do some other stuff, even if it's small. So she's good. I always like seeing her on screen.
So let's like I said, I held back on talking about Darcy and Elizabeth. Right, so let's talk about that because once Catherine enters the picture, this is where the truth really starts coming out, and their love really starts to blossom and move quickly. And to me, that was a great Mr. and Mrs. Smith type scene.
The fight scene they have.
Yes. Yeah. I thought they used a lot of great techniques, and that's all I'm willing to say about that.
Yes.
Anybody wants to go further? By all means.
I will go further. I thought that was it was a little gratuitous, but I think it was fun. Where they have they start both grabbing weapons and they start cutting each other's buttons off.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a little gratuitous, but it wasn't excessive because she only got one button cut off of her dress. Yeah. And he got all of his vest buttons cut off, but he wasn't showing any skin, which I thought was interesting. The only thing that really...
PG-13.
Yeah, it's PG-13.
She showed a lot of skin.
She showed a lot of skin on her chest.
Yeah.
That is something that we got to see a lot of from Lizzie, from Lily James.
I think that was something that was purposely thrown into the cinematography.
We saw a lot of leg, too, which was...
In that fight scene, we saw a lot of leg when she was grabbing him with the scissor lock right around the head.
She's not rolling on the ground for nothing.
No, she's not. Yeah. With her dress, a huge dress coming up. But I actually thought it was actually like well done because it wasn't too much and it wasn't too tame at the same time. Even with the I actually liked the soundtrack from that particular scene. It was called Flirt Lovers Fight. Which is perfect. It was a perfect title for that scene.
Yeah, and I didn't even get... I think the Mr. and Mrs. Smith comparison is great. Because that's exactly what this was. This is where they were going to gain their mutual respect for one another and realize that where their hearts belong, so to speak. But I thought it to be fun. Like, it wasn't overly... Again, it's PG-13. So I think they cleverly stayed within that realm. Without being like overly over. It didn't exploit. It wasn't overly exploitive. And again, I think that the two actors themselves were having fun. I think they're having fun doing that scene, which helps for me as an audience member. If they look like they're having fun doing this, I'm in.
What I thought was interesting about that film, too, is that it really paralleled Pride and Prejudice, where in that scene, they actually are really confessing their emotions to each other, and they're like getting out all that pent-up like anger from not being able to speak to each other beforehand because they're in a room alone together, and there's nobody else, nobody who would be able to hear their what they would say that would be like unconscionable or like not proper to say to a man or a woman, you know, right? So they're just able to release everything, and at the same time, because of the PPZ universe, they get to fight it out too, which is great. And then that leads to the letter, which is almost the exact same thing that happens in the Pride and Prejudice film.
Go ahead, Marisa.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a little bit more to that point. The whole fighting scene in the original story, they do have a blow up. They get all their differences out there, and it's pretty much like just saying all their differences and coming to an agreement and and a level of understanding of each other. And I think that's what remove the zombie aspect of it and just let the story be itself. That's where it tells the story in a great way, because it has those moments to be angry, it has those moments to breathe, and it has those moments to be calm, and the audience can feel the emotional beats. And I felt with the Pride and Prejudice, you add zombies and there's fighting, it didn't really have that. There was too much action, and that I felt like it was just another element that added too much to it, that I couldn't appreciate what was actually happening between these two characters and building that relationship. Whereas sometimes being simple is enough. That's all you need.
I think those two scenes, yes, because of the action I think that's the only thing that made it really different than the Pride and Prejudice movie, was just the action. They didn't talk about zombies really in either of those scenes, except for the very end of the letter where he says, yes, I'm at the siege of London now, and the zombies are, I'm speaking to you where the zombies are coming over the wall. Really, that's it. Like, a lot of that was just their romance and what had happened in the drama between them and their families.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Speaking of London, I do, let's spend some time talking about the ending of the movie, because it's where we get most of the action, the big reveals of Wickham being the undead, being the devil that he so described at the table with Lady Catherine and so forth. So, what did you guys think of this? I mean, this is a pretty big build-up.
I feel like he was only pushed to being a devil because once he revealed that he was, they made him that way, and he made himself that way. He gave into it. He had been. He said that he didn't need to eat brains because the only thing that satiated him was his anger and vengefulness towards Darcy. Which I thought was fascinating, but what if they had made the treaty? If they had made this treaty, made this appeasement, would he have honored it? Would he have still been a peaceful zombie? Would the rest of the zombies been peaceful?
We wouldn't have gotten a big action scene.
We wouldn't have. Yeah, that's right.
No, but I think it speaks to Lady Catherine's point about, all it takes is just one.
Just one. Yeah.
And so had he killed him, he was going to eat his brains and do all that, right. And then he would have been the devil that he would have been.
Maybe that's if he did kill him. Yeah, that's what it would have took to just put him over that edge, and then the rest of the zombies would have gone over the edge anyway. But I thought it was so funny because in the scene where he's talking about making the treaty before they even know he's a zombie, he even says it takes 9 months to raise a child. It takes 16 years to make a man. It takes several months to make a soldier. Right. And all this time, it only takes one bite to make someone a zombie. So it's like he was talking about himself the whole time, really. Look at me. I'm this lieutenant, and I'm one piece of brain away from becoming a vicious animal.
Yeah.
He's our Anakin Skywalker. Love leads to hate, leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, leads to that.
Love? What are you talking about?
I don't know. Whatever the damn
fear leads to
anger, anger leads to hate leads to suffering.
And then suffering leads to eating brains. Suffering leads to hunger, and I need a Kit Kat break.
And desire.
Desire.
Fair enough. And luckily, you guys knew what I was going to.
Yes, we did.
So, but yeah, I mean,
I liked how they built him up to be a likable person, and then he became the most dislikable person.
Yes.
So I think that, just a character journey, that was actually fun to watch.
Well, and for me, too, I enjoyed how they parsed out the information about that character, about Wickham. It's like, well, he's not being completely honest with you. The guy was a mooch. Basically saying he's a mooch.
It got revealed in Darcy's letter.
Yeah. And he's a mooch, and he's not what he's all cracked up to be, and all he wanted was more money, more money, more money. And finally we had to say, get the hell out. and so you're like, oh, so that cracks that facade. Again, I didn't see him already being a zombie, because even when we were at the what should I say, the church of the zombie, they were St. Lazarus Church. They were in various forms of being zombies. They weren't attractive to look at. He still had, pallor, whether it was makeup, which we don't know, but he still had pallor. He's still outside of, he covered up whatever infection he had. He looked he looked the most human of all the zombies.
Well, in fairness, he was also in a military wardrobe, so that
Covered up.
Yeah, it tells the audience that he's in a position of power and authority,
Right.
And he automatically has that respect and gravitas that the audience should look towards to a person.
But his facial features showed no
No disfigurement.
No disfigurement, no sign of
He got
infection.
lucky. He got lucky.
No sign of infection at all, which helps the ruse, so to speak. So
there we go. I think that overall covers the story aspects of it. And now, obviously, we've made comparisons throughout. So just to give you guys just a separate quick history of Pride and Prejudice, it was written by Jane Austen in 1813. Now, she died shortly thereafter at the age of 41. And obviously, we don't necessarily have a picture of her because photographs didn't exist at the time. But we have an image of her there for you, and the
Lovely portrait.
Lovely. The book has gone on to sell over 20 million copies, which quite a bit. And she's known. We can tell this from both this movie and the actual novel. She's known for her realism, biting irony, and social commentary. And the thing that I found interesting was when she started writing, it was more as a series of documents and kind of that formed a novel, and then she got away from that into more novels such as Pride and Prejudice. So, and as Sean and Marisa have spoken to, there's many adaptations, and Sean knows the one with Keira Knightley, of course, directed by Joe Wright, which I think most people kind of do. But
that was just like within the past 5 years.
No,
Right?
that was 2005.
Oh, wow.
Oh, was it that long
That was a
ago?
long-
It must have
Past
been.
16.
It must have been
That's-
right
wow.
when.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was right
So for
when
11
Pirates
years?
of the Caribbean
Pirates
was
of the
out.
Caribbean. The first one was out, and the second one was about to come out because the second one came out in 2006.
See, I'm really up on my Pride and Prejudice.
So-
Oh, wow. By 11 years off. Sorry.
But
I apologize.
Let's talk about the source material for this specific movie, right? It was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and I found it to be an interesting story. So the ending's very different from the movie, and we'll talk about that. But Seth Grahame-Smith is the one who wrote this, but it wasn't him who came up with the idea. He was commissioned to do it. And I found
Because
that-
if I'm correct, because Pride and Prejudice is in public domain, and you could do
anything you want. with
anything
it.
you want with it, as far as publishing and whatnot. That had something to do, if I'm
Well,
correct.
yeah, all
Absolutely.
the rights and patents are up. So.
Right.
Yeah, so it was Quirk Burke's editor, Jason Rekulak. He was seeing so much popular fanboy characters like ninjas, pirates, zombies, and monkeys, and so he just kind of made a list of all these public domain books like War and Peace, Crime and Punishment, and he said, "Why not just do this?" And he went to he went to Seth Grahame-Smith, said, "Would you like to write this book?" Essentially.
And he had already done something that was a similar meld of, nearly Victorian era, but, United States style, right?
Yes.
With Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And he was like, oh, well, why not this?
Exactly.
It seems like your style.
It does indeed. And the book got by the way, we are working on, Seth is an Emerson alum. I am an Emerson alum, and so we're trying to. And I did actually meet him a little while ago, and so we're going to try to get him for a separate interview, hopefully, in the near future. So stay tuned for that. But he said it was. You have this fiercely independent heroine. Speaking about Lizzie, you have this dashly heroic gentleman. You have militia camped out for seemingly no reason whatsoever nearby. And people are always walking here and there, talking and taking carriage rides here and there. It just was ripe for gore and senseless violence from his perspective, anyway, is what he says. So, and you know what? It's a very simple novel overall, but the nice part was like literally they had to up from 12,000 books in the initial order up to 60,000 books.
I just got a correction here from Zach, I believe. PPZ came from before Lincoln, FYI. Wow, that's really...
It did. You're correct.
Yes, so
Zach,
I was
but
off.
You are correct, Zach. I thought Sean was referring to the other books because he did he did kind of other parody type things.
They seem like zombie romance novels or vampire romance novels, kind of. Was it something like that?
Zach, look up the earlier novels, and just the title alone. Like he compares porn. It's the history of porn, is it, Zach, or something like that?
He's got the Big Book of Porn, a penetrating look at the world of dirty movies. The Spider-Man Handbook, the Ultimate Training Manual, How to Survive a Horror Movie, All the Skills to Dodge the Kills. Then Pardon My President, Fold and Mail Apologies for 8 years.
Yeah, so there, you know what I mean? I thought that's what you're referring to, so thank you, Zach, for clarifying that. But you could see by those titles alone, he lives in this comedy world, but taking something very serious.
Right.
So, which I liked. And from there, we have the development story. Now, Demetri, this was originally a Lionsgate movie, and it still
was. Yeah, I guess it still is. It's this is one of those things that happens throughout Hollywood, and unless you're in the thick of it, you don't understand what's going on. I can only speak I wasn't at Lionsgate when this product was acquired. To be brought into development. All I can say is that my time working at Lionsgate, there were in my time, there were distribution deals set up. Lionsgate would do it with Miramax often, in which Miramax had a Michael Moore movie, and Miramax falling under the Disney umbrella, Disney thinking that the movie might have too much heat or controversy to it, so Miramax had to sort of find somebody else to release it, and the studio, Lionsgate at the time, they get a fee. They put their name on it, not so much Miramax, but Miramax would get the grosses and such. So that happens a lot. The studio will get a said picture, and for whatever reason, maybe they change their minds as we go into the development. It took a long time for this movie to get made. There were a lot
from 2009.
And a lot of moving pieces, people coming in, people coming out. So I mean, I don't know. I can't venture to say why Lionsgate didn't release it, since I wasn't there when they acquired it. It was just a weird. I don't know. It would seem to be something that would have been in Lionsgate's wheelhouse at one point, because they made their bones off of horror. This seems like this could have been something that they could have done. Maybe because it was just too long and they felt that they changed as a company. They moved away from Saw. Their Hunger Games. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. So Natalie Portman was originally supposed to star as Elizabeth, and she was set to produce. Now, she does have a producer title on this movie as well, but it was David O. Russell, December of that year, Variety reported that he was going to direct. Now, people cite it could be scheduling conflicts, it could be budgetary reasons that he eventually didn't do it. But David O. Russell? For Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, really?
I can understand the quirkiness of the characters that he might be attracted to direct it. The only David O. Russell films I've seen are obviously, Silver Linings Playbook, and then the ones that he's most notably known for now. But having known that he was maybe would have been a part of it beforehand, maybe he would have been a completely different director than we know him as.
Yeah, I mean, he was coming off. Well, I'm trying to think when Silver Linings came out.
This was
Silver Linings was
PPZ was happening before Silver Linings.
Okay, so at that point, David O. Russell, I believe, he was coming off of the horrendous flop known as I Heart Huckabees. Was the movie, and
I think that's officially in 2003. So yeah, I mean, it could.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Well, I'll have to look him up. I'm not sure what he was.
It took him a long time to get back in the game,
because that movie went viral. Made Lily Tomlin a YouTube star. And I think coming into him, he was probably at the time at the right price. From what I understood, he had written the script for this. When you have somebody like Natalie Portman coming on board, there's cachet right there. She could have made a good Elizabeth.
I could believe her.
Yeah. And
I think it would have been too similar to Kira, though.
Yeah.
She looks a lot like her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just saying. So anyway.
And, it would have been a different movie with David O. Russell at the helm. And I don't know what his script looked like.
I think it would have been less action, more talk.
Perhaps. And there could have been a little bit more humor, a little more zaniness back then as well. Like, it may not have, like, the subject matter may not have been taken as seriously.
Yeah.
So like, meaning they wouldn't have played it so straight.
So it would have had an even worse rating.
Could have. I mean,
who's to say? I mean, but I mean, they went through development hell over this. I mean, they had so many guys. It was offered up to Mike Newell, who did 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Matt Reeves, who most recently did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and he's doing the new one, which I forget what the damn title of that one is. And then, of all things, it fell to Craig Gillespie. And you know him, Demetri.
Craig Gillespie, yeah, he's the guy that we talked about him with
Last
the Finest
week.
Hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, he would have been perfect he would have been safe, he would have been perfect for the PG-13, and he probably would have made it even safer. He probably wouldn't have made it as gory and probably have tried to get more of a family, he's a good director, but I think his version would have been completely different as well.
Yeah. And so we end up on Burr Steers, who did 17 again, Charlie St. Cloud, and as you mentioned earlier, Demetri, he went through and he put in all the beats of Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
He's like, this is perfect.
Yeah, and apparently too, he had no real great knowledge of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, the book, but he looked at the script and he did a page 1 rewrite, saying I'm going to insert more Pride and Prejudice in this movie. And to his credit too, he was the one that said, "Listen, I think the strength of the story is we got to play it straight. We can't be. We don't want to make it buffoonish or cartoonish. If we play it straight in this world, we might have a shot at something here." So I liked what he did. I think from a directional standpoint, he did feel that his hands were a little bit tied by making it PG-13. And he even talks. He goes, "You can make a movie in England." He goes, "Trying to make a movie over here in America, there's so much you have to, there's so much politics and red tape and the MPAA and trying to get this through." But
he talks especially because you can grease some palms,
right?
So it's not just like there's the barometer and you have to go below that to be PG-13, so that you can push it.
Yeah.
It just takes some moolah.
So, I think something that's interesting to talk about David O. Russell. So this is 2009, right? The following year, David O. Russell puts out The Fighter. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah,
it's like, this could have been fun, but I think the die was cast when he turned away, when he walked away from Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. For him, his career may have gone down a different path.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if he could have succeeded with this movie. I really don't. And I get that you could say, this movie's not necessarily succeeding in its own right, but I think I enjoyed this movie, and I think, it'll make its money back at the very least. But
I think it was, I'm going to agree with you there. I enjoyed it. I think it was the first feel-good action/horror film of the year. And it's something that, talking about it, I just saw Pride and Prejudice with my wife, and we watched it on Netflix, and then I see this just mere weeks later, and it's great because Pride and Prejudice was fresh in my mind, and I can draw all the parallels from it, and me talking about the similarities at home makes my wife want to watch it now. She wants to go to the theater, and so I think this is a very watchable movie for not only guys, for the bosoms, but for couples to see, because there is a romance in there too, and the awkwardness in the relationship between Lizzie and Darcy.
But I think too, from a marketing standpoint as well, when the one way that you might be able to get guys to go see Pride and Prejudice is if you add "and zombies." Because I'm not sure how the Keira Knightley movie did box office wise, but
that was a humongous hit. for 2005. That was like the romantic movie of the year.
Was it really?
Everyone
It's
loved
that. Yeah, ask any girl.
No.
Any
Well,
ask
girl
any-
with Pride and Prejudice
That
is
was
on
a
there.
huge movie in 2005.
Was it? Because I recall it.
No, it was big.
I know you probably did. You had no interest in seeing it whatsoever, just like me. You know, but speaking of that, you know, one of the interesting parts about, so, you know, we cited Seth, and by the way, Seth in his own right, I mean, he's collaborating on the next Lego movie. He's doing a Ray Bradbury adaptation now for Warner Brothers and various things, and he's been in TV. So, and he actually wrote the script for Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter based off his book, and so the question was, why didn't he just write the screenplay? Unfortunately, you know, he is a busy guy, and you know, one kind of asked, it's a two-sided sword, or
Double-edged sword.
double-edged sword, because he says, you know, it's hard giving up control, but at the same time, when you get to just watch it, it brings something fresh to it, and he enjoys that side of it, and you get to just be a fan at that same end of it. So I appreciated that. By the way, you know, we didn't really talk about Burr Steers as kind of a director, so I want to kind of take that moment, since he's done a bit in his own right, and it's surprising in terms of the work that he did do to now see this. Anybody want to start with the most surprising? I remember someone's note was he played Roger in Pulp Fiction.
I wanted to point that out. That was a little Easter egg for me. I was like, he's known for Pulp Fiction? Like what? And then I did more research. He's the Flock of Seagulls guy who's he's on the couch and
Flock of Seagulls,
Samuel L. is asking him like
he shot in the gut.
Yeah, he eventually shoots him after the other dude doesn't give him the answer he wants.
That's funny.
It was great.
Hilarious. You know, and he's done a lot of TV work too. He's directed a lot of Weeds, The L Word, Big Love, and New Normal. And the irony of you know, the first three, those are HBO and Showtime.
Right.
So going back to the restriction of the PG-13 aspect, you don't get that with Showtime and HBO.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I want to see an unrated version of PPZ.
There may, you know, I know they had to cut a lot due to the MPAA, and you know, I think too for him, another thing that I found interesting about this, you know, was again he was asked again about the reinventing of zombies, and it's really interesting to an extent, and people may hate me for this, but you know, Zack Snyder, when he did his version of Dawn of the Dead, he gave us a very spry zombie. Like that was like the first time
where they run,
and they run like they run like cheetahs. Like, and before that, we hadn't had that much change. They don't run so much in Walking Dead, and here we are. We're at another turn point where he made them talk, and he gave them, you know, he said, I wanted them to be a little bit more formidable. He looked at Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, where in that book, and even in the movie, in the book, there was a bit of cleverness about them. Like they could work out.
There was an agenda. They
yeah.
wanted you know, they wanted to be a version, and is it Omega Man with Charlton Heston?
Of course,
that's
the original.
Yeah.
That's a
Based
fun
on
take
that.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you've ever read the book too, there's a planning, there's a scheming behind them, and so I do like what he did. He does add another layer to zombie lore, not unlike maybe Anne Rice did with vampires. You know, I mean, she changed a lot of those rules as well. So long as an audience is accepting of that stuff, I think he does a good job, and I think he did it smartly. I thought the pacing of the movie was fine. The movie comes in at what, an hour and 38 minutes, an hour 40 tops?
No, it was 147.
147.
147?
Yeah.
Yeah, 147.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it was 147 according to IMDb.
I got an hour 38 minutes, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that the movie moved along, and I got into the story. It wasn't, again, my difference between this movie and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer, this movie wasn't overly stylized. For the most part, it did stay true to its surroundings, its environment, and there wasn't a lot of fast editing. We only had the slow-mo use, like that one scene. I liked the fight scenes. I didn't find it to be hyper real.
They didn't need too much CGI, which was kind of good.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't put it in a lot of the characters that were in the scenes. Like maybe you get to see like with the young girl Annabelle, you get to see her face is really CGI'd, right? But the remaining, like there's a lot of stuff. Again, it's implied, the grossness, the way the zombies like are off scene being smashed or whatever. You don't have to see that and they don't have to use CGI because it's off screen, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about kind of the production aspects of this. Let's start with the cast, and just quick question in general: who stood out to you the most in general? And it could be for whatever reason, but
Darcy, because he was Colonel Darcy, and he really was like this era's version of Blade, and I really enjoyed that. And he was cold and ruthless and calculating, but he was also like edging towards being romantic with Lizzie, which is great. You got to see a big change in his character towards the end of the film.
I would say Parsons Collins because I remembered basically every scene that he was in, and he was more of a comedic character than I thought he was going to be. Like a more memorable character than he ever was in the book.
So. He was. I was just about to ask, like, what was his use in the book?
Another Joe Schmo.
Just another Joe Schmo.
He was a suitor for Lizzie.
Okay.
So really, we have like 3 men
Yeah.
who are eligible suitors for it.
Right, that's true. I mean, for me, it was Lizzie. I mean, for me, I was just attracted from the get-go. I'm a really big fan of that actress. She just, again, she was able to carry off the Victorian poshness, and yet she could fight, and she could be strong, and I liked the character, and I thought that she carried it off. You need an actress who, if they can't hold a gun, or in this case a sword, or carry off a fight scene, then your movie's not going to work. But I think she was able to handle the Victorianness, the beauty, and at the same time she could handle the action really well. And she was great with her dialogue. For me, it was definitely her.
What I liked was they took Cinderella and were able to form her into this. I really enjoyed that, and speaking of, they didn't go to China to train, but the Bennett sisters did spend classes doing martial arts and really learning it, and obviously in particular Lily James and Jane, played by Bella, and so they kind of went through that. You know what? Time will take to really. I think England's different. We don't. Maybe we're just not saturated with the celebrity news as we are, because I found it interesting that Lily and Matt Smith are a couple, and the fact that
are they still a couple? I knew they were dating on, but are they still a couple?
I don't read that deep. Into
I don't know either. I just knew that they dated while they were in production of this movie.
They've been. It seemed they were dating for a bit. But what's funny is obviously the contrast of their characters being as such.
They're supposed to hate each other, pretty much.
She detests him.
And she had a couple of funny things too going on too regarding, she said it's so hard to fight like this in a corset. That was a challenge for her, but also knowing who, like, your makeup was so good that they didn't really use that a lot of dummies. So in one shot, I believe, could have been coming out of the ball after the big fight scene, she kicks a zombie in the head who she thought was a dummy, and it wasn't. It was a stunt person. She literally kicked the guy in the head, and she's like, "Oh my God, I thought you were a dummy." She's like, "I am so sorry." And that was hard distinguishing between movie magic.
They were doing their job.
Zach, if you want to bring it up, we do have a picture of, it's not from that exact moment, but it just highlights the amount of zombies on the floor. So you can kind of see at least the vast scale, because by the end of it, she says they killed over 100 zombies.
While he's bringing that up, I also wanted to mention that we know Lily James was Cinderella, but also we had Sam Riley in another Walt Disney film, he was in Maleficent. He played Vial, which was the familiar that Maleficent always had around with her, right? She could change him from like
the crow.
He went from a crow to being a man to being a dragon.
Yeah,
exactly. Everything she needed.
Yeah. And there's the scene right there.
So you can just see by the sheer amount of, and again, for us, it's tough to tell who's real and who's not.
Yeah.
But okay, so
and I loved her though in Cinderella. I got to give her some props.
She was fantastic.
She was right. I mean, we broke down Cinderella,
Cinderella.
and she was fantastic in Cinderella. Here's the thing.
She should have sang more in that film.
Yeah,
saying.
we're in a period here in Hollywood where it's race equality, women equality and everything. And I've said this before. I love it. I'm all for it. And I think that if Hollywood truly, truly looks, we have an amazing young crop of actresses who could play strong roles, who could play good roles. They can be in comedies. Lily James is a wonderful example of this by just how she was in Cinderella. I mean, she literally lights up the screen as that character. She shines above her costume, which could be very hard to do, and we should focus on this young talent and put them in more movies, because I think they're already proving that they can be likable and that they're good. So I'm very happy to see, and I will promote, people like Alicia Vikander and such. You want more, actresses in movies. You want them to be in stronger roles. Well, you have a lot to pick from, folks. Do it, because I think audiences can take to these people. And I think the mere fact that she proves that she can be in Cinderella, and you said at the top of the show, into Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and be able to carry it off, that to me, that's a win. That's good.
Yeah,
she's great.
And she had a lot of fun doing it. And Sean, you brought up Sam. I think the nice connection there is we've been bringing up all these different movies. His mom is such a fan of Pride and Prejudice, and her favorite, Marisa, is the Colin Firth one.
Yes,
and
thank you. That's my favorite. I can't tell you. Legitimately, there was one time I found out that Hulu Plus had all the BBC Colin Firth episodes on Hulu. And it was like 3 a.m. I was like, no, I'm not getting any sleep tonight because I'm going to be watching this.
Is it?
There's 5.
5.
But they're all in like
2 hours.
Yeah. Actually, no, I think there's 10. There's 10, but they're all in full movie length times.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Go watch them.
Well, luckily his mom did. But here's the trouble for him is he didn't want to be those people, right? He wanted to draw inspiration from them, but he didn't want to just be them. And obviously he's playing something different in a different world and different circumstances. So, what he ended up with, as he says, I wanted the voice to be somewhere between James Mason or Peter O'Toole and the character somewhere between Sean Connery and Dr. No and the guy from A Clockwork Orange. All of that was my thinking. I had this epiphany while I was drunk.
God bless him.
I liked his raspy voice.
Yeah.
It was funny because it was a blend of like awkwardness, but he was still raspy and almost like, this guy he's kind of a badass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I enjoy. He had a good presence too, and again when we talked about we talked a little bit about his leather trench coat, so to speak. It wasn't used like it was just part of his character, much like Sherlock Holmes's hat or houndstooth coat. Like it was just part of his costume. He didn't use it as a weapon. He wasn't Batman or Blade with it. That was just part of his costume, I felt. And the costuming in this movie was, I thought, very well done.
Absolutely.
Men and women alike.
And it was functional too. Like we had Lily James wearing in one of the scenes. I think when they're in Meryton and when they meet Wickham for the first time, she's wearing this really high collared coat, and I'm like, is that a functional thing? Like it's beautiful, but it's also
fashion or function.
Yeah, it's also functional because I'm thinking in this time period, in this alternate reality, they want to wear something that goes up higher on the skin to prevent zombies from biting
on the neck and whatnot.
Good point.
Cool. Good point.
Absolutely. Let's again. There's by the way. So if you download our rundown, there's a bunch of stuff on each of the actors that you can kind of go into. But for our purposes, let's skip ahead to cinematography. These names, I'm terrible with names. I could literally say John Smith and I'd still stutter.
Remy Adefarasin.
There you go. He is. This movie is very British because there is British actors, and now here you have a British cinematographer, part of the British Society of Cinematographers. He's done Little Fockers, Fred
Claus, Match Point, Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
He's worked on.
About a Boy is definitely very English.
Yeah. You think?
Yeah, that's a very English
Yes,
film.
it is.
But Marisa, you in particular liked the look of this, and so how would you describe it?
I thought it was beautifully shot. The way that they set up certain and the lighting and the color choices and the color themes throughout, it was beautiful. You definitely got the feel of Victorian England at that time in the landscapes and whatnot. You felt how vast and how massive it was, the story. I think there were moments even in when she's outside or when she's in the dungeon type basement. There's you can still get the feel of what it looks like. And there's moments where she was just sitting, and it's the way it was blocked and framed. It was beautiful, and you can definitely tell that someone put a lot of energy in how they were supposed to be framed in certain looks. And overall it was a pretty film. I don't want to just keep saying pretty, but it looked beautiful.
Well, they used the for whenever there was an eerie feeling, used the blue tint, which gave it a cold feeling, and then the moments of love and romance, it had that golden hue. So they knew how to use light well.
So
it definitely showed high production value to it.
Yeah, and I felt that for me, because I talked earlier about I wish it was a little more lush, but that was for a lot of perhaps some of the exteriors, but the interiors, especially in the church, especially at the ball, when the orphans break in, or stuff like that had a great dusty quality where something bad is going to happen. He used shadow and lighting a lot. The dancing was well shot. My only thing was outside. I just wanted a little more green, because that's what we're used to, and I think it would have set up a great dichotomy between. We got this beautiful land and everything, and there are zombies who are so ugly and rancorous, so to speak. So
I feel like whenever they were indoors and they were doing Pride and Prejudice stuff, it was always warm, and it had a very warm tint to each of the scenes. But then of course when we had the zombie scenes, or even when they were peppering us in the scenes with zombie stuff, I liked that, because over at the Bingley House ball, that right in the beginning of the scene we showed the exterior, and it's almost as if it's the zombie vision. It almost had it was that cold tint, but then it also had a little bit of a red in there, where it was almost
a point of view shot.
Yeah, it was a POV shot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, where they had almost their eyes were blood red, and they were or messed up in some way, and they were going towards their targets, right? So I really liked those scenes too. And then we just the way the cinematography was, they would set up everything. They would have a peppering of something's going to happen.
Right.
Then we have the normal stuff, the Pride and Prejudice happy stuff, dancing in the Marytown Ball or whatever. Right. And then we have the crazy zombie stuff at the end. It was well done.
Yeah.
I agree. I 100% agree. And, Sean, you in particular love the music. It's done by a composer named Fernando Velasquez.
Yes. Go ahead.
Well, he's worked with Guillermo del Toro numerous times. It's specifically The Orphanage,
Crimson Peak.
Yes, and so
that was a great score. We talked about him a lot during Crimson Peak. Yeah,
that's right. So, but Sean, you felt. The tracks.
I do. I do. Okay, so he also did Hercules, Devil. He did Mama. He's now seeing Hercules, because I was doing more research and I saw he did that too. I was just like, okay, that makes more sense. Now we have not only like the horror film stuff, but we have the action film stuff that he's done as well, those kinds of scores. So he's really used to doing this kind of stuff. He has a good history for doing it. It's good on his resume. There's 23 tracks. It's a good listen. Yeah. So I've been driving around, just putting it on my iPhone, listening it to Apple Music and just hearing the whole thing. It's
Ready to kill some zombies.
Ready to kill some zombies.
I'm gonna do it. My way back.
It's about 55 minutes, so it's not too long. It kind of, some of it's kind of like more horror meets Pirates of the Caribbean action kind of music, right? So my favorite tracks, if you guys want to listen to these, are Darcy, which is the first track. Darcy. Yeah, number 2 is the Illustrated History of England, which that I love.
Opening credits.
The opening credits, I love it, and it's perfect because it starts off with like the dun 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 dun, like the England, the British banner, and then it gets like deeper and darker, and then sounds more creepy, like the zombies are like the plague has happened, the zombies are invading, and then We Are Under Attack, which is track 6. That's my last favorite one.
And you know what I like? The fact that it is 55 minutes, you said? Yeah, ish. So it just tells you, it lets the movie breathe, because there's not, it's not like they pull songs to fill out the rest of it when it's not score. So it's like, you almost for an hour you have just no music, which is actually quite long in today's movies.
Very long. I definitely enjoyed the music. We always talk about how much we love instrumental scores.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
like the soundtrack was beautiful, because I was queuing up the music for, just to start our show, and and I was listening through the tracks. I was like, all these are awesome. Yeah. But we got to start with the bombastic song that really gets us into the show. And I think like the Horse of Men. The 4 Horsemen, and the battle scene where they, blow up the bridge. Those are the most bombastic, obviously, scores that you'll get on the soundtrack. Yeah. Beautiful, though.
Indeed. Well, let's start kind of getting into where it is now, right? So heading into the movie before this, it started to get a lot of press over at Comic-Con. Most of the main cast was there, along with Burr. And, they kind of talked about it, and that's where they released the first trailer. Then after that, in November, we got the full trailer. And a lot of this is being promoted in England first, because it is such a British-made movie, and then the U.S. gets it, so
it's spread across the sea like rats carrying the Black Plague?
Yes. Well, what is interesting is that Lionsgate UK is releasing this overseas, which is which to me I find fascinating. Do they think worldwide it'll do, or overseas it'll do more money? Which is possible. I mean, it happens. It happens.
Also, I think it's just Pride and Prejudice itself. That story it's a historical story in the UK. That's their bread and butter. Like one of their bread and butters for authors. I mean, you have Jane Austen. Story, literature. It's bigger in the UK than it is in America. Although a lot of Americans love Pride and Prejudice, obviously, but it's one of the highest accolades of literature for them.
Yeah. Well, in the U.S. it was released this past weekend, February 5th. It came in at number 6 in the box office with a total of $5.3 million.
Yeah, and
very disappointing.
It opened up at 2,931 locations. That's a lot of locations. It's almost 3,000.
Super Bowl factor. I mean, it's got to be.
I think it's tough.
Or zombie factor.
I think it's a little bit of both. If this movie had been released maybe in 2009 or 2010, it may have done a little bit more. I think there is a saturation of the zombie market where, Walking Dead is this show that everybody watches, okay? Everybody watches, everybody talks about, but after that's they're full of zombies. There have been some cheesy zombie kind of movies out there. I know.
Zombievers.
Zombievers.
That was a bad one.
And
whoa,
it was bad. It was entertaining. It was entertaining, but it was bad.
Okay.
And I know CW is having a modicum of success with iZombie, which again sort of kind of changes the rules of zombie lore. We had World War Z, which was very successful.
And we're getting World War ZZ.
Yeah.
Right?
There's supposed to be no, you're not making it. I'm not sure if it's called ZZ, but
Double Z.
Double Z. World
Z
War
squared.
Z. But there is there could be an oversaturation of zombies, and I think with movies like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which, listen, I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead a lot. I saw it just in that sole basis, and I didn't hate the movie, but it was a movie, and stuff like that could sit with audiences, and they may reference that. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. If you're unaware of the book, which anybody who's in, I don't know how you would be if this is your sort of kind of wheelhouse. The Super Bowl didn't help because a majority of your males are going to be watching the big game. Lily James is almost there. I think is becoming a star. Matt Smith, there wasn't a lot around him that they could have tried to get some of the Doctor Who fans. I don't know. It could have been released. Maybe they went a little bit too wide. They could have picked a different day to go out on, or a different week. No. Who knows?
Well,
I feel like the trailer really didn't do the film justice, and that's what a lot of people saw when they were over at other movies, like in the months coming up to the film. And I think that, honestly, with me, that kind of turned me off. Like, I saw it looked a little gratuitous. It looked kind of silly. But then when you actually, and that's the whole thing, like judging a book by its cover, you go into it, you actually watch it. It's a very enjoyable film.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we did Hail Caesar, and that was just a moment ago, so you can catch that. But that was where critics loved it, and audiences C- in terms of the cinema score. This isn't the exact opposite. It's got a 43 on Rotten Tomatoes, but a B- cinema score, which it's not great.
Not fantastic.
It's
not fantastic.
And on IMDb,
not terrible.
It had
it's not
6.4 on IMDb.
Yeah, it's not. A B- in cinema score really isn't that good. They're saying that the word of mouth is not going to be fantastic. The thing that's interesting to me is that it got a 43% Rotten Tomatoes. There have been a couple of horror movies that have come out, I would say within the past month and a half. We had that movie The Forest. We had the movie The Boy. Each of those got
a collective 14.
A collective. Like, you're not joking. I think you're right. Yeah, it's a collective 14. 43 for a horror movie. A lot of that is coming from people who enjoy the genre, and they'll give it a kind review. Like, you'll find good reviews for this movie, and then there's a lot of other critics who are going to just hate the mashup. And again, I understand where you're coming from. I get it, but I don't think I'll be honest, and I'm trying to word this in a way that I'm not going to get slammed. I'm not entirely sure that when the book came out and when this movie came out, they were marketing towards the Jane Austen fan. I don't feel that. I think they wanted to get more of that PG-13 horror crowd to come in here. Maybe some of them thought Pride and maybe some guys are being forced to read that book right now, Pride and Prejudice, and they're like,
I was never forced to read Pride and Prejudice. I read it on my own accord.
I will say this though, Zach, feel free, if you will, just get me the full exact title of it. But there's a Guinness Book of World Record now for the most amount of zombies reading Pride and Prejudice. Or maybe Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I forget exactly which one.
But
wait, zombies reading?
Like people dressed as zombies? Okay, I get it now. I get it. I got you.
But yes, and that's funny. And again, it's like one of those records. Like, well, no, duh. When have there ever been zombies reading anything? But the point is, at least it's getting people to read again.
Right.
You know, and I think that is a testament in some ways. Like I don't, you know, whether or not it's big or it's small, like it shouldn't be discredited.
I agree with you, and to me that is the power of cinema. If it could encourage some, you know, if it could encourage an audience to do that. I wanted to quickly go back because you said the trailer. Because I think where they sort of kind of messed it up too was their poster. Didn't we have I know we had the graphic of the cover of the book, but
we did have the poster as well.
Yeah, but how cool would it have been if you had just had a lenticular movie poster that would sort of kind of be like when you're in the Haunted Mansion in the room where the paintings change, and it had the lenticular of the prim and proper woman, and as you walk by, then she turns into a zombie. Like, how cool would that marketing have been?
That would have been. I would have liked that. That's more. It's simple.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
Just take the book. Like, you don't have to get. Like, I'm not sure that the poster. And again, you can argue whether or not a poster helps bring in box office. First and foremost, you want a poster to at least catch a moviegoer's eye, and if it was that, like, that would do it. And when you have that title, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's sort of cool. So I'm just surprised they didn't go that route, because those lenticulars have come way down in price. They're much easier to install, and it would have been a cool image.
Which one is the poster that everybody has seen in the theaters? Like, that's just there. Is it the one where it's Lizzie and then we have Darcy right behind her with the sword up, like the one that's on the?
I think it's them on the hill.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, the hill with the zombie
the
hands kind of popping up. Okay,
Yeah.
that. I actually like that, and I think the more you see it, it kind of grows on you. But another thing that I think was a factor at the box office, and people seeing it, was that it's one of those films that's a blend of two genres. It's horror and it's romance together, which, come to think of it, I can't think of any other romantic horror films out there. Right?
Like, well, I mean, Crimson Peak is gothic horror.
It's definitely not Twilight, because Twilight's like glamorized vampires, which is totally different.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I can think of is, like, people could argue that it's a comedy. That's always a tough blending to do. Some people don't buy it, and movies like Zombieland happen to pull it off pretty decently.
That was a great film.
Yeah, it's a really good, and that blended action, that blended horror, gruesomeness, and it had good comedy in it as well. It's tough to do. Even sometimes if you make a good movie, to horror and comedy, like there was Dale and Tucker versus Evil. Really good, small, independent movie, but again, it was blending of comedy and horror, and sometimes that can be very difficult. Ever since Saturday the 14th with Richard Benjamin, it's just tough to do. And I think people may not have wrapped their heads, if they were unfamiliar with the book and that poster, like, see, the lenticular gets definitely gets your attention. It could have been hard for people to wrap their head around.
I feel like it's a hard sell, because you have guys who like zombie movies. I think a lot of guys like zombie stuff more than women do. So then you have the guys who want to see it for the zombies,
unless you're Walking Dead,
and the sexy stuff, right? And then you have women who like Pride and Prejudice, and they like romance, but then they see the zombie mashup in there, and they don't necessarily want to see it. It kind of turns people off a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It did for me, because I'm a big Pride and Prejudice fan. Someone tweeted at me the link to Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, because they knew how much I love Pride and Prejudice. But no, I'm not joking.
No,
but like, I had no desire to see the trailer that they tweeted at me. If we didn't do Anatomy for it, I wouldn't have gone and seen it on my own to do this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
shot a musket at it, Marisa.
I love Pride and Prejudice, the story itself. That I'm actually okay with just having the story be itself.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk about the possibilities of where this can go, because we possibly may get another one, right?
Or two.
But first, let's talk about perhaps what Sean is buying his wife for Valentine's Day. A nice hot topic. Inspired. There's 7 pieces that they made specifically just about all of this, and I found it interesting. And Zach, I'm wondering. I was actually supposed to pull pictures of these, but I forgot. If you literally just look up Hot Topic, and I know everyone in the booth's probably gonna laugh at you, like, why are you looking up underwear? But they made 7 pieces: a lace-up corset, a ruffle lace, baby doll. Marisa, you want to read these? I feel weird reading women's underwear.
Sure. So Hot Topic partnered with Sony Pictures, and some of the garments that they have includes a corset with a beautiful lace-up detailing, a lace baby doll gown with lace, a lot of lace here, lace long line bra and high-waisted ruffle panty, lace trimmed camisole, lace up sweetheart dress, and a skirted panties with goddess. There you go.
Fair enough.
And they came
Sexy.
out. They came out January 22nd, so they're exclusively a Hot Topic. They're available for you there. And Zach is pulling in the picture as we speak.
That wasn't in the movie.
Oh, there's the Jane Austen zombie,
or was
right?
it? And you didn't see it.
The Lizzie zombie or whatever's supposed to be on the cover of the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies book.
There
right?
you go.
Is that what it is? It kind of looks like her face right there.
Whatever it is, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I would get that for my wife. That's for sure.
Well,
I hope she's listening.
Valentine's Day.
Or I'm sorry.
One of the things. So, the reason why I say that there could be a sequel. Number one, Seth Grahame-Smith, who wrote the novel, he just came up with follow-up to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter called Last American Vampire. And so, he's now getting into the sequels, and, there's a post-credit sequence where Wickham is kind of riding into the scenes, and so it leaves it open to interpretation for a sequel. And, of course, Burr Steers said, yeah, I'm in. He's already been thinking of ideas of what could possibly work. I'm trying to let me get his exact quotes. I love the whole idea for it, but I don't know what it is. We'll see how this does. The thing about it is you have these characters, and now you can take these characters and go and do anything. What's that? I don't know. I heard a voice.
I heard something too.
I thought God was speaking to me. The whole thing about it is you have these characters, and now you take these characters and go off and do anything you want with them, and it's kind of great. I was thinking more in a vague storyline, but escape from post-apocalyptic London, Wickham sort of ascending to a dark throne, and also the other thing that's really funny is you can bring in, have no limit on yourself. Within the public domain, you have Heathcliff, or you can go to Jules Verne. So who knows? You can do lots of things.
Yeah,
if they touch Sense and Sensibility, then I'll be also equally furious.
You'll be rabid as a zombie?
No.
Funny.
You're the ruined one.
I like it. That was good.
All right, well, I think we've covered overall most of it. Let's get final thoughts. Let's start with you, Demetri, over there.
Oh, and nothing has changed since the beginning. I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I appreciated the fact that it played it straight. It was an alternate universe taking place in Victorian England, and where just zombies happen to exist, and our main characters, this was something that they just had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. The cleverness in its script lies that everything was used as a sense of form and function and fashion. Like, there was nothing that was overly frivolous. Like, we understood why these women knew how to fight. It wasn't that they're action heroes. They had to train. So I appreciated that for it. There is, in fact, a longer version of this movie that may come out on Blu-ray and or DVD. Maybe we'll see that unrated version that he was forced to cut because of PG-13. So I would get it. I would look for it. I don't mind extra blood and gore. So there you go.
All right, Marisa?
Oh, well, I think you know my opinion. I enjoyed Pride and Prejudice, the story. I did enjoy the fact that people had fun with a memorable story. So it's like, if they wanted to throw their own interpretations for, shits and giggles, absolutely, they did it. And overall, it was entertaining. Visually, it looked beautiful. So, I will give them that props. Overall, it made me appreciate Jane Austen even more.
I feel like it's a feel-good action film. The first one of the year. It's something that the zombie lover guys can drag their girlfriends to, and they can see some romance in it. It's it's a perfect blend of the Victorian era Jane Austen, along with our love and fetish for zombies that we have in our society right now. And it's I'd give it a 70% score, maybe even a little higher. You know, I feel like the conversation we had today made me love the film even more, which is great. And I really love Colonel Darcy's cool exterior.
Yeah.
You're going to dress like that for Halloween? All right. For me, it's just pure fun. I think the rewatchability of it is great, so I'm excited for it. And whatever comes, I was skeptical at first of what it could be, but I'm glad I went, and I'm glad I did enjoy it because it is good.
It's a good popcorn movie.
D Movies 1701.
At D Movies 1701. Please support me. Say hi.
Serafini TV.
That's right. On Twitter.
And what's yours now?
Sean Austin O.
Now
on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to find me and my book, City of Angels and Discontent, on Amazon and iBookstore.
Yay.
That's right. Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you, that Zach Wilson in the booth, for providing all the images. Once again, you can download the pictures and the rundown. No matter if you're on YouTube, no matter if you're on iTunes or anywhere else on our website, whatever the case may be, as part of the description, there'll be a direct link to that, so get it, because there's certainly a lot of good stuff that we unfortunately have to skip over that you can kind of dig deeper if you're curious, and also see the pictures. Thank you guys so much. We'll be doing Deadpool next week. We'll be doing Zoolander 2. We might do How to Be Single. Tons of other stuff in the pipeline for us. We've got a great summer coming up of movies. Batman v Superman, X-Men Apocalypse, speaking of the Four Horsemen. So lots of good stuff. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye all.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.